Figuring out a top 5 is one of the most complicated things you'll ever do in your life. But I did it, and I made it objective, I made it accurate, I made it so everyone would agree by the time I finished it. How did I do this? Well, it was complicated. It took a lot of research, it took a lot of facts and algorithms, but in the end I simply just watched a lot of TV and kind of came up with my own opinions. But anyway, first of all, I'm going to get some honorable mentions out of the way. Number 1, Breaking Bad. It didn't make the top 5. Why? Well, it's got a great 5th season. That 5th season is undeniably awesome. But everything before that, well, most of the seasons started really well and ended really well, but they had a whole little bit in the middle there. It just really didn't work. Skylar is a very annoying character. It takes a lot of time to get to where it wants to go, and sometimes the things are all too convenient in a way. And there's a lot of time lost, so it wasn't the most efficient show. It's a good kind of once watch. You're never going to revisit Breaking Bad, maybe that 5th season, but it doesn't quite make it. Star Trek, The Next Generation, this is a lot of TV to watch, and most of it is very consistent. It's very thought-provoking. It's great sci-fi. It's the best kind of Star Trek, I think, out there. Picard, played by Patrick Stewart, is amazing. He just gives everything to that role. It really sells the show. If anything, though, I just don't think it's as rewatchable as some of these other TV things. It's not as profound. It's very by the numbers, but still a great TV show that's worth mentioning. A couple of new ones I've come across. They've only had one really good season, and they could very well go up into a top 5 later in the year. But that's The Boys. I thought was really good. Really great start for a TV series. We'll have to see what happens there. Mindhunter is another one by David Fincher, who really is, the workhorse behind that. And he's directing a lot of episodes. That's a really good TV series as well. Might get there, but at this stage, it's just one series, as well as Chernobyl. They're just too soon. I need to see more of them before we can actually give them an accurate description. Also, there's other shows like Twin Peaks, which is similar. They started off great. They had a lot of potential, but they fizzled out in the end. This a lot more about the consistency, how much it brought, how profound it was, and just basically how it affected the whole TV landscape. The only other thing I'll mention is The Wire. I didn't mind The Wire. I don't think it's as great as everyone says. Yes, it's very accurate. It's very detailed. I think there are some moments where the acting isn't that great. The plot lines aren't as interesting. But in terms of realism and detail, and it did introduce Idris Elba to a lot of us. But I just didn't think it was great enough to make the top 5. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Number 5, The Walking Dead. This is a TV series that came out just before Game of Thrones and knocked everyone on their ass. That first episode's fantastic. That first season's only 6 episodes, but it just takes the concept of a zombie apocalypse, which is so stupid, which was seen so much, and I know this kind of kicked it off, but it really brought it into the real world setting, and really it just kept growing with every season. I think the second season is one of the best. A lot of people say it's not that great. I think they had less to do with, but they had to focus on their writing a lot more, and so they made the character of Shane really interesting, and they had made him butt heads with the main character and his wife, and then you've got all these other subsidiary characters. This also was a show which wasn't afraid to kill off any character. I mean, I forget who the old guy in the hat is, but he was a great character. I just didn't see him dying. I thought he was going to go through to the end. It is really interesting writing all the way. I mean, this show went for 9 seasons so far, I think. I think there's a couple of seasons in season 7 and 8 which weren't as great. I think they focused on Negan a little too much. But you've got a whole lot of interesting stuff. Why is it only number 5? Well, I do think it does. It's not as consistent. It is doing a whole lot of TV episodes. I think it's about 24 a season or something like. No, 16 a season. It varies. But through it, you've got so much great action. Everything's done really well. The characters, Rick Grimes, Daryl, Michonne, all got great little arcs. And I know there was that bit where I forget what his name was, but he was pushed under the bin, and everyone was supposed to think that he was dead, and everyone kind of knew he wasn't dead. In season 6, I know it's got little things like that, but it's also got a great season. Great season in season 4, and one of the best episodes, I think it's called, isn't it The Flowers or The Grove? The Grove, with those kids. I mean, stuff like that will rock you to your core. Really good series, keeps evolving, keeps growing, and becoming a newer, better season. And I can't believe how much they rehash it. It is very watchable, and it's easily one of the best TV shows of all time. Number 4, Game of Thrones. Now, I only really marginally put this above Walking Dead. They are really neck and neck in my books. Game of Thrones obviously went for 8 seasons. It's just wrapped up. The last season was one that was really not well liked by the public, and I can see why. I've watched it recently, and the writing does drop off. A lot of the plot points and the characters don't really match up with what's come before. But I have to say, like, throughout most of the series, it's not as consistent. And there's actually many reasons of why I'd put it probably at number 5 and put Walking Dead up here. But the reasons I give it a bit more than The Walking Dead is that it just creates such a vast world, such an epic nature, so much fantasy and creativity. It's really unlike anything we've ever seen. The fact that it goes across this whole continent with different characters dealing with this person, and it is very interesting. And you do have really good seasons. That first season is amazing. Season 4, of course, and season 6, they're all really watchable and really standouts. And a lot of people say that, it's not as good as the later seasons aren't as good as the earlier seasons. I have to say that people get a bit blindsided. I think seasons 2 and 3, really not much happened. They're quite forgettable. There's the Battle of Blackwater and, of course, the Red Wedding. And I think everything up until the Red Wedding is really, my interest was dropping off. That Red Wedding just kicked everyone back into gear, and that season 4 was amazing. So that's why it kind of survived so well. Season 5 obviously was a bit of drop in quality. But, it's renowned as a show that could kill off anyone. You didn't know what to expect. There's a lot of stuff to like about Game of Thrones. The sex, the action, the fantasy elements. I don't think the writing was always that great. I don't think Benioff and Weiss or even George R.R. Martin is like the greatest writers of all time. I think it's just serviceable most of the time, but it is just a great world to explore, and that's why it's number 4. Number 3, House of Cards. This was another TV show that was started up by David Fincher, and it was what kind of kicked Netflix off when they were announcing they were going to do original content, and they did possibly the best original content they've ever done. They've never really topped House of Cards. I watched that first season. I was really blown away. Kevin Spacey's amazing in it. Robin Wright's amazing in it. All the ancillary characters are done really well. I love the way it's filmed. The writing behind it is amazing by forgotten his name. He's a great political writer who did the Ides of March. But anyway, I think he dropped off in season 4, and I haven't actually gone beyond season 4 at this stage. I'm kind of scared because the writer left. But everything from 1, 2, 3 to 4 is really just gripping, new kind of take on like a cold politics, how cutthroat it is, how diabolical they can be. I know it's kind of stretching the truth in some aspects, but I never felt that it wasn't interesting, compelling, or challenging. Much better writer than Game of Thrones and even Walking Dead. It's only 10 episodes a season, and it's one that you binge, and you binge quite easily. Maybe it's because I'm a bit of a sucker for David Fincher, but I love this style. I love the acting. I probably appreciate the first 2 seasons a bit more just because they had that addressing the breaking the fourth wall kind of stuff. But yeah, like that first season, it probably goes 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. I do think they're all of really great quality. After that, I really can't judge, but just based on those 4 opening seasons alone, really good television, some of the best. And number 2, Dexter. Dexter, starring Michael C. Hall. This really got me as a youngster. And still these days, I still watch it. I watch the whole series from about 1 to 4. It's another series I don't go beyond 4 because I just got scared. I couldn't let... I've heard just terrible things about season 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it went to. But I think whatever's in those first 4 seasons, in fact, I think season 4 of Dexter is the best season of anything in television. It is so consistent. It's so good. And it's, of course, dealing with the Trinity Killer. Every episode hits a mark. Every episode counts towards a later story. There's not one episode that's not really interesting or pays dividends in the end. Such a good season. That season alone is what propels it up over these other TV series. It's just so well acted as well by Michael C. Hall. There's certain little things he does when he's picking knives, and just how he inhabits this character that's just on the edge of, like, not even on the edge, on the other spectrum of society, and how he tries and blends in and pretends to fit in with all these people. It's so fascinating, especially with his sister, and how he deals with his getting a wife and child, and I mean, playing this serial killer in the kind of light of day in front of everyone, and as he's a cop, especially those first opening seasons where you know he's either getting hunted, or if he's being hunted by the ice truck killer, or he's being hunted by the police and his friends around him. It's just really good viewing. I don't think Dexter gets enough praise from people, but it's really superior writing, really great television, some of the best. Yeah, it's my number 2 at all-time great TV show. Number 1, was it ever any surprise that it was going to be The Sopranos? This series from the late 1990s into the 2000s just consistently brought its A game. It got better every season. I really liked the final seasons and the penultimate season. Tony Soprano, played by James Gandolfini, is one of the most intimidating characters, most well-written characters. Yeah, he's a dickhead, but you love him. You're so interested by him and his decisions and how they affect everyone. This was another series in which, of course, maybe the main character was always going to be invulnerable, but the other characters around him, you just didn't know who could go at any moment. I like the black comedy of it all. The comedy in it is something that really, I still think of the jokes, and they're so subtle, and you only get them after like the second viewing half the time. And I've watched this series so many times. I've analysed it so many different ways. It's one that I really am marveling at. I don't know how it's that good. A lot of people don't see The Sopranos as being that good. That's kind of maybe a subjective point of view, but it's just each storyline was something that was very thought-provoking. There's so many thought-provoking elements to it. It's in that real world with some kind of characters stretched a bit, but it always went in a new direction. It brought in new characters really well. Every new character that comes in is super memorable, filmed so well, looks awesome, sounds awesome, and yeah, by the end of it, it's the finale is one of the best finales as well. It's so weird, but so in the nature of The Sopranos. It's pretty much perfect. I'd say probably the weakest season is season 4, I felt. But even in season 4, you've got some of the greatest episodes. The Wait is one of the best ones, and that's in season 4. And also, it's probably got the best television episode ever written, which is Long-Term Parking, which is simply... I remember seeing that as a kid, and it just really floored me. That was amazing. But yeah, that's my top 5. Sopranos, Dexter, House of Cards, Game of Thrones, and The Walking Dead. I know it's right. I know it's 100% correct. You cannot fault this by any way. And yeah, thank you.